I, female, 28, and my husband, male, 31, have been married for 2 years, together for 5. After much reflection, I realized that he has always been a rude person who blurts out whatever he thinks. But I first took notice during our honeymoon. Cliché, I know. About midway through our honeymoon, I put on a tight dress. I thought that I looked really good. I had lost weight for the wedding, but not too much, and had been working out with my husband. My arms were toned, my stomach toned, etc. I've always had an hourglass figure, so my waist has always been accentuated with wider hips and shoulders. Anyway, as I'm fawning over my new dress, my husband tells me that he wants me to gain weight back to how I looked when we got engaged a year prior. I asked him why, trying to figure out why he was asking me this on our honeymoon, when all I got were compliments about my toned, curvy look. He mentioned that my butt and breasts got smaller. Ouch. I hadn't even gone down a cup size. My butt is still noticeably larger than even my thighs. I got really upset and angry at him for saying that during what was supposed to be a romantic vacation. I can pinpoint this moment in time when I started to lose a little sparkle. I started getting high all the time, starting on that trip, and drinking in excess on bad days. Most days I can barely go a few days without taking Zaza edibles to just zone out all night. It also keeps me from relapsing into my eating disorder. Fast forward, the comments still haven't stopped. I've gained, lost, weight lifted, Pilates. He still claims that I haven't gone back to how I was when we got engaged. It actually enrages me. I look at photos from that time and I look, the freaking same. That's saying something coming from me, an eating disorder survivor with bad body sense. LMAO. Today, I finally had enough after he made yet another comment to me, saying how he'd like me to gain healthy weight. Healthy weight to him equals sign, big breasts and butt. Not fat, but some squish. Ha ha ha. What the frick? Can you tell that I am at my wit's end? How can you tell someone that you claim to love that they would look better if they gained weight? I have accepted him as he is, with all of his very many flaws. When he stopped taking care of himself, I was still there, loving him, when he weighed the same as me at 6. 2. I still wanted him. I told him that I have had enough, and that if he wanted me to gain a single ounce, I expect him to gain weight, back to what he weighed when I met him. I agreed to date that man. He wanted me when I was 120 pounds. I wanted him at 180 pounds. We are not the same. I have loved and wanted him all these years while ending the life of myself to be desirable for him. I'm actually sick even writing all of this and seeing how pathetic I sound. I feel like it's important to note that I was very skinny when he pursued me 5 years ago. I was recovering from an eating disorder when he met me. All of his exes are slimmer and not curvy at all. He also constantly makes comments about how unattractive fat people are. I don't agree, but part of me thinks he wants me to be fat. Will I then need to lose weight? Am I being duped? Is this a trap? Is he clinically insane? I don't understand how strangers look at me now and say, I look smoking hot, and how they wish they could have my body. And I am miserable because the only person I want me is acting like a butt. I am strongly considering leaving him, despite that I would lose everything. Our house, split pets, etc. I just don't want to waste my youth feeling like shit about myself when this is the best I will ever look. For further info, I am currently 140 pounds, so 20 pounds heavier than when he asked me out. He is 135, 140 pounds, so 40 pounds less than when I met him. It's very triggering to be told to gain when he is shrinking due to his addiction to video games. I have to force him to eat with me. So triggering. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It feels like he saw you feeling so good about yourself and wanted to take you down a notch. This isn't love. This is control and manipulation. And he's doing this even though he knows you're recovering from an eating disorder? Girl, please run fast. Comment 2. This man sounds sick. Never allow a man to control your body. If you are healthy, you don't need to gain weight. Him being so cruel on your honeymoon is not a good sign. Get out of a marriage where your partner makes you feel like shoot. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. After that last argument, I decided to take a few days off work to clear my head. I went to stay with my sister for a bit, hoping some distance would help me figure things out. On the first night, I got a call from my husband. He was furious that I had left without telling him. He accused me of abandoning him and not caring about our marriage. I tried to explain that I needed some space to think, but he wouldn't listen. He hung up on me, and I spent the rest of the night crying. The next day, my sister suggested we go for a hike to get my mind off things. It was a beautiful day, and for a while, I felt at peace. But then, my phone buzzed with a text from my husband. He sent me a picture of himself with a plate of food, saying he was trying to eat more like I wanted. It felt manipulative, like he was trying to guilt me into coming back. I didn't respond. That evening, I got another call from him. This time, he was calmer. He apologized for his earlier outburst and said he missed me. He asked if we could talk things through when I got back. I agreed, but I was still unsure about what I wanted. When I returned home, we sat down to talk. He admitted that he had been unfair to me and that his comments about my weight were hurtful. He said he was willing to go to couples therapy to work on our issues. I was skeptical, but agreed to give it a try. We started therapy the next week. The therapist helped us uncover some deep-seated issues. My husband admitted that his obsession with my weight was tied to his own insecurities. He felt like he had lost control over his life and was projecting that onto me. He also confessed that he was struggling with depression and using video games as an escape. I shared how his comments had affected me, bringing up my past eating disorder and how triggering his words were. The therapist suggested we both work on our individual issues alongside couples therapy. My husband agreed to see a psychiatrist for his depression, and I decided to go back to my old therapist to deal with my body image issues. Over the next few days, things started to improve. My husband made an effort to eat more regularly and cut back on his gaming. He even started going for walks with me in the evenings. It felt like we were making progress, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. One night, I found him in the living room, staring at old photos of us. He looked up and said, "I miss how happy we used to be." It hit me hard because I missed that too. We talked for hours, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. It was a bittersweet conversation, but it made me realize how much we had both changed. The next day, I got a call from my therapist. She had an opening for session that afternoon, so I went. We talked about everything that had happened, and she helped me see that I had been neglecting my own needs for too long. She encouraged me to set boundaries and prioritize my well-being. That evening, I told my husband that I needed to focus on myself for a while. I suggested we take a break from therapy and work on our individual issues. He was hesitant, but agreed. We decided to give each other space and see where things stood in a few weeks. During this time, I reconnected with old friends and started doing things I enjoyed. I went back to the gym, not to lose weight, but to feel strong and healthy. I also started journaling, which helped me process my emotions. My husband, on the other hand, struggled with the separation. He called me often, sometimes just to hear my voice. I could tell he was trying, but it was clear that he needed more help than I could give him. One night, he called me in tears. He said he couldn't do it alone and asked if I would come home. I told him I needed more time, but I promised to support him in any way I could. He agreed to see a psychiatrist more regularly and even joined a support group for people dealing with depression. As the weeks went by, I noticed a change in him. He was more present, more engaged in our conversations. He started taking better care of himself, and it showed. We began to reconnect on a deeper level, and it felt like we were finally on the right path. But then, something unexpected happened. I found out I was pregnant. It was a shock, and I didn't know how to feel. I was scared, but also hopeful. I told my husband, and his reaction surprised me. He was overjoyed. He said this was the fresh start we needed. We decided to move back in together and take things one day at a time. We continued therapy both individually and as a couple. It wasn't easy, but we were committed to making it work. Looking back, I realized that we both had a lot of growing up to do. We had to face our demons and learn to support each other in a healthy way. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real and it was ours. Thanks for reading. Aita for confronting my wife about her obsession with anime characters and neglecting our relationship. My wife, 25 years old, has always been into anime, and I was too before we were in a relationship. As we were just boyfriend and girlfriend, we would enjoy watching many together. She is a great artist and has always been drawing characters, and even her own original male and female characters. She also really enjoys reading and writing stories based on anime, shows, and video games, including some fan fictions she's written herself. We're now married for 5 years, and she still continues to enjoy her anime and content creation, but it has evolved over time. Naturally, as the infamous Rule 34 has become more involved in her hobbies, she now draws, writes, and reads more explicit content regularly. Some periods have been a daily occurrence. It wasn't an issue until a few years ago, about 1 year into marriage, when she had become borderline obsessed with a particular anime and some of its male characters. This is where she would seek out specific Character X reader stories, some with plot and romance, and many with no plot at all. Just stories she seeks to input herself into an explicit relationship with graphic detail. It turned me off to this particular anime, so I would only really entertain other animes to watch with her. It sucked because she did get me super involved and interested in the anime, but I couldn't watch it without imagining and overthinking what was actually going on in her head when she watches it. I chalked it up to ultimately just overthinking it and tried my best to use that as a justification for my feelings. Well, it got worse. Now she had to have figures, shirts, merchandise, and screensavers of said character. When she got pregnant with my baby, she bought a car magnet that suggested a baby with the character's theme on board. It was too much, and I expressed my feelings and was basically told not to worry, and that it was insensitive to suggest she change over things that aren't real. And it was a big part of who she was, and it makes her happy. It continued to evolve. There were months where I was denied intimacy because she wasn't in the mood. Come to find out that she would still self-intimacy while I was away and read these stories, watch the anime compulsively, and need more character-themed and related items. I try to respect her needs at this point in time, but I was known to be a little pushy and needy with intimacy. So I just kind of stopped hoping I would be sought out, but it rarely happened, at least nowhere near what I was hoping for. Going back to today, she still reads these stories with various characters. She still watches anime often and she still draws, but now she draws and animates explicit scenes of these characters. Her own original character, the female, now is in many of them. Her original female character she uses in much of her art and writing, she claims is just a character she has ownership of and is her own. But this character is strikingly similar to the way my wife looks. I truly believe it is her own fictional version of herself. And this female character is featured in all of her explicit drawings, some with only one male character, one with 3. All male characters she also reads explicit content for. Last night she said she didn't want to have intimacy, and I had to go to sleep early to wake up early for work. This morning she was awake in bed next to me and asked for intimacy. Gladly I gave her what she wanted. But come to find out later today, less than 30 minutes before I woke up, she was reading more stories. So now all of my conflicted feelings are back full-fledged, and I don't know how to approach this or make it okay for me or make myself feel better. At this point, I'm afraid that it's not me she's having intimacy with anymore, and it prevents me from being present like I want to in many different situations. And I can't enjoy intimacy without a guilty or negative perception of her or myself, or enjoy it the way I want. Is there anything I can do? To add, we do not have a sexless marriage, and she's a wonderful mom. This only affects my personal image and my value intimately, and triggers me to overthink things, and it always has a negative effect on my self-esteem. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This essay contains inappropriate content and cannot be corrected. Comment 2. There is a word for it. I don't know which one. But I have read stories like this more than once. At some point, the fiction is much better than reality because reality has its flaws. She needs to focus back on reality in your relationship. Make sure that she understands that she is risking your marriage for this fictional character. Couples therapy, individual therapy, or divorce are options. At one point, She might even neglect the child to live more in her fantasy. Edit. I forgot to include some words. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. So, about a month ago, things took a turn. My wife's obsession with that anime character reached a new level. She started spending more money on merchandise, and our house was slowly turning into a shrine for this fictional guy. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder to pretend everything was okay. One night, I came home from work and found her in the middle of a live streaming session. She was drawing explicit scenes of her character and the anime character, and she had a pretty big audience watching her. I felt like I was intruding on something private, even though it was happening in our living room. I confronted her about it later that night. I told her how uncomfortable it made me and how it was affecting our relationship. She got defensive and said it was just a hobby and that I was overreacting. We had a huge argument, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the brink of something serious. She accused me of not supporting her passions, and I accused her of neglecting our marriage. It was ugly, and we both said things we didn't mean. The next few days were tense. We barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was mostly about our daughter or household chores. I felt like I was living with a stranger. One night, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I ended up at a park near our house and sat on a bench, just thinking about everything. That's when I realized I had to make a choice. I could either continue to let this fester and destroy our marriage, or I could try to find a way to understand her better and see if we could work through this together. I decided to give it one last shot. I sat her down and told her how I felt, but this time, I tried to be more understanding. I asked her to explain why this anime character meant so much to her. She opened up and told me that she had always struggled with self-esteem, and that creating these stories and drawings was a way for her to escape and feel confident. She admitted that she'd been using it as a crutch, and that she didn't realize how much it was affecting me. We decided to set some boundaries. She agreed to limit the time she spent on her drawings and live streams, and I promised to be more supportive of her hobbies as long as they didn't interfere with our relationship. We also agreed to spend more quality time together, just the two of us, without any distractions. Things started to improve. We went on dates, watched movies, and even started a new anime series together that we both enjoyed. It felt like we were reconnecting, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about our future. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening while we were having dinner, she got a message from one of her followers. It was a long, heartfelt message from a young woman who said that my wife's art had helped her through a tough time. She explained that she had been struggling with depression, and that my wife's drawings and stories had given her something to look forward to every day. My wife was visibly moved by the message, and I could see how much it meant to her. That night we talked about it, and I realized that her art wasn't just a hobby. It was a way for her to connect with others and make a difference in their lives. It made me see her passion in a new light, and I felt proud of her for the first time in a long time. I told her that I supported her, and that I wanted to find a way for her to continue her art without it affecting our marriage. We came up with a plan. She would set aside specific times for her art and live streams, and we would make sure to have dedicated time for each other and our daughter. We also decided to seek couples therapy to help us work through our issues and improve our communication. The therapy sessions were eye-opening. We learned a lot about each other and ourselves. I realized that my insecurities were a big part of the problem, and she learned that she needed to be more mindful of how her actions affected me. It wasn't easy, but we were both committed to making it work. As the weeks went by, things started to get better. We were more connected, and our relationship felt stronger than ever. I even started to appreciate her art and the impact it had on others. It was a long and difficult journey, but we came out of it stronger and more in love than ever. Looking back, I'm grateful for the challenges we faced because they forced us to confront our issues and grow as a couple. We still have our ups and downs, but we're in a much better place now. I've learned to be more supportive and understanding, and she's learned to balance her passions with our relationship. Thanks for reading. Aita for dumping my girlfriend after catching her lying about being with her ex. I found out a few weeks ago that my 45-year-old girlfriend of 8 months lied about being at her home with her ex while she told me she was in her sports lesson. It happened when we were 3 weeks together, but had explicitly established that we were a couple and were exclusive. Apparently, girlfriend came home on a Friday around 7 p.m. from work, and her ex was at the door and she let him in. We were chatting intensively just before, while she was in the train home. Chatting was very flirty, a bit intimacy, and very sweet about being each other's boyfriend and girlfriend. Texting suddenly stopped from her side. Her last message was at 7:06 p.m., but I supposed it was because she had to hurry to her first taekwondo lesson, which started at 7:30 p.m. At 7:40 p.m., she sent these texts. "Well, I'm late, but I'll just watch instead, and I'll participate next time." I replied that it was a pity and that I hoped that she would still enjoy it. I didn't hear from her after this, and at 0:30 when I went to bed, I sent her a text saying that I hoped she had a good evening and wishing her good night. She only replied with a kissing smiley face the day after, on Saturday, at 10:45, also wishing me a nice day. I found this a bit strange at the time, but didn't think much of it, as for the rest, everything was fine. Now I found out that something else happened, as she exchanged the following text messages with her roommate. Let's call her Andrea on that Friday. Andrea, 7:18 p.m. "I'm still here, eh?" Girlfriend, 7:21 p.m. "Haha, so." And on Saturday, girlfriend to Andrea, 11:50 a.m. "It was X yesterday." And another one saying, "I ran into him." So instead of being in sports class, like she said, her ex was with her, and apparently they were having so much fun that Andrea warned her that she was still at home. I had a feeling for a long time that my girlfriend bends the truth a lot, and that something was wrong with the ex, who abused and mistreated her, by the way. But she always brushed it off as me being paranoid, got mad at me for questioning her, and said that the times she saw her ex were always very unpleasant, ending in big fights, and that he even tried to force himself onto her. I found out several other things my girlfriend lied about, not always important things, but sometimes also in relation to her ex, about being somewhere where she wasn't, etc. Now my girlfriend has admitted that she indeed lied, says she regrets it, swears nothing ever happened with her ex, and wants to reestablish trust in our relationship because she really loves me and wants us to have a future together. I too still have strong feelings for her, but I really don't trust her anymore. Also, she lied about so many, even petty things, that I'm afraid that it's part of her nature. I do understand, by the way, that her lying is probably caused by her hurtful past. She had a few messed up relationships, and her father was also very hurtful in a non-sexual way. She is doing her best in the past weeks to show that she is reliable and loves me. But some smaller strange things keep happening, and they immediately end up in fights. And also, she seems to be of the opinion that the past is the past, and that I can't be mad over it anymore, and starts minimizing and turning things around when we do discuss them. So, what would you expect from her to reestablish trust? I don't want to keep fighting with her, but I also don't trust her. Now for an update, I broke up with her. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, yikes. I don't think there's any salvaging this one. Such an utter lack of respect, decency, and boundaries. Calling you paranoid and her getting mad at you for asking questions is classic gaslighting. And don't excuse her behavior to you just because she has past issues. If she has legitimate issues she needs to address, that's on her to deal with, not you. There are no promises to be made here. And now that she'll suddenly get her act together, it's all a facade to pacify you in the moment. And in a sense, trauma bond you. Don't be stupid here. Just walk away from it all. Comment 2. The lack of trust is enough to move on. She's not in her 20s anymore, and beyond the point of hiding moments with her ex and all the other lies and half-truths you allude to. It's impossible to have a good friendship without trust. So what hope does this relationship have? Move on. Now, for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. After breaking up with her, I thought things would get easier, but they didn't. The first couple of days were rough. I kept questioning if I made the right decision. I missed her despite everything. But then, something unexpected happened. On the second day after the breakup, I received a message from Andrea. She wanted to meet up and talk about something important. I was hesitant, but agreed. When we met, Andrea revealed that my ex had been seeing her ex more frequently than I knew. She showed me more messages that painted a clearer picture of the situation. It was a lot to take in, but it confirmed that breaking up was the right choice. Andrea also mentioned that my ex had been struggling with her mental health and had started seeing a therapist. This made me feel a bit better, knowing she was getting help, but it didn't change the fact that she had lied to me repeatedly. The next day, I decided to focus on myself. I started going to the gym more regularly and picked up a new hobby, photography. It was something I had always been interested in, but never had the time for. This new routine helped me clear my mind and gave me something to look forward to each day. I also reconnected with some old friends, which was a great distraction, and reminded me that I had a support system. However, just when I thought things were settling down, I received a call from my ex. She was in tears, saying she missed me and wanted to meet up to talk. I was torn. Part of me wanted to see her and hear her out, but another part of me was scared of getting hurt again. After a lot of thinking, I decided to meet her, but set some boundaries. We agreed to meet in a public place and keep the conversation focused on closure. When we met, she apologized profusely and admitted to all the lies. She explained that her hurtful past had made her fearful of being honest, but she realized now how much damage it had caused. She also mentioned that her therapist had helped her understand her issues better and that she was committed to changing. It was a heartfelt conversation, and I could see she was genuinely remorseful, but I also knew that trust once broken is hard to rebuild. We talked about what went wrong in our relationship and what we could have done differently. It was a painful but necessary conversation. She asked if we could try again, but I told her I needed more time to think about it. I didn't want to rush back into something that had caused me so much pain. Over the next few days, I reflected on our conversation. I realized that while I still had feelings for her, I couldn't ignore the red flags. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and without it, we were doomed to fail. I decided to focus on my own healing and personal growth instead of jumping back into a relationship that had so many issues. During this time, I also learned more about myself. I realized that I had a tendency to ignore red flags and give people the benefit of the doubt, even when they didn't deserve it. This was a pattern in my past relationships as well. Understanding this helped me set better boundaries and prioritize my own well-being. One evening, while I was out taking photos, I ran into an old friend from college. We hadn't seen each other in years, but we quickly reconnected. She had also gone through a tough breakup recently, and we found comfort in sharing our experiences. We started hanging out more, and it felt good to have someone who understood what I was going through. As the days went by, I felt more at peace with my decision. I realized that breaking up with my ex was the best thing I could have done for myself. It allowed me to focus on my own growth and happiness. I also learned the importance of trust and honesty in a relationship, and knew that I wouldn't settle for anything less in the future. Looking back, I can see that this experience, while painful, taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and self-worth. I'm grateful for the support of my friends and the new connections I've made. And while I still have a lot of healing to do, I'm optimistic about the future. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.